Hello, welcome back to the Finding Your Freedom podcast and this special bonus episode. I'm Nat Baldwin and I'm excited to have you here with me today. If you're new or if you missed last week's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with Steve Barrett, a guy whose story is all about shaking up what we think success really means. He went from a 30-year corporate career to coaching in Spain, and honestly his journey is packed with the kind of lessons that stick with you, and bits of the conversation have come back to me a lot over the last week. So today I want to do something a little bit different. I'm going to take you behind the scenes of that conversation and unpack 5 big ideas that jumped out at me. We'll dig into how Steve's experience challenges the usual story of success. That's lesson 1. Why finding your purpose and what really matters to you. That's number 2. What it really takes to embrace change. That's 3. The power of focusing on your strengths is 4. And how to letting go of fear, regret. That's number 5. And I'll share how I got on with Steve's Freedom Challenge, where you imagine your best life. And maybe you'll give that a go too, because it's a really useful exercise to get on with. So whether you're thinking about shaking up your own career, feeling a bit stuck, or just want to live life more on your own terms and keeping in mind more what matters to you most, I think you'll find something in this episode and these recaps that we have from Steve's conversation. So let's dive in. It's not going to be a long episode, but I think there's going to be really lots of useful things that we can take away from that discussion with Steve. So lesson 1 was redefining success beyond material wealth. Let's start with this one. So what does success look like to you, really? Steve's story is like a great reminder that the big job, big car, big house, that kind of script isn't the only way. He actually traded a 6-figure salary, the designer suits, the Jag, for a much simpler life in Spain, and he actually feels richer now. I think a lot of us are feeling this shift though, and there's this great recalibration, it's called, happening, where people are stepping back and asking, like, is this it? Is this what I want to do with my life? And Steve's journey is just a great example of that. So a few things. He realized success isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. More stuff doesn't mean more happiness. In fact, it can actually weigh you down and can actually pretty much make you feel worse. Real growth happens when your work lines up with your deeper purpose, and sometimes the little things like a morning coffee, a walk in the sun, in the forest, like those are actually things that can make you feel great. One of the bits I picked out was Steve describing his new life. He said, "We live in the smallest house on the street, I drive a Fiat Panda, and I've never been happier." So yeah, it's just a great example. We chase after things that are supposed to make us happy, but that joy fades so quickly. And we're all familiar with this idea of the treadmill, and there's even a name for it. It's called hedonic adaptation. That's what the clever people call it. You get used to a new thing and then you're back to wanting the next one and just chasing. And I guess we've all been there in some guise or other. And it's just important to remember when we're kind of getting into that state, or when that's our mindset. And there's some other things that really hit home for me. Steve didn't just throw away all his old skills. He brought all that experience from his retail leadership into coaching. So it's not like when you're making a change, you have to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can find something. What Richard Bowles says in this fantastic book. In fact, I can grab it here. What Colour Is Your Parachute? It's a fantastic book, and it's all about how your skills are actually portable and recognizing what those skills are, so you don't have to start from scratch just because you're perhaps changing a direction, changing role within your current organization, or doing something completely different. So a few questions I wrote out for you to think about. Has your idea of success changed over the years? Was there a moment that made you rethink things? For me, it was probably health issues and just generally feeling depleted of energy and wanted to be more energetic more than anything at that point in time. So yeah, maybe just have a think about those questions. Has your idea of success changed over the years? Was there a moment that made you rethink things? Moving on to lesson 2 from Steve's conversation, finding what's meaningful to you. One of the things I loved about Steve's story is how he found his purpose almost by accident. He realised, looking back, that his best moments at work were always about helping people grow. So there's a big difference between just having a job and feeling like what you do really matters to you. A job pays the bills, sure, but what really matters to you is what gets you out of bed in the morning, gets you excited. And Steve's purpose, his was to make things better for other people. And it's simple, but very powerful. And it allowed him to find his direction, find something that he's really passionate about. And you know what? Purpose isn't always this kind of lightning bolt moment. Sometimes it's a slow burn. Steve said it really started to click for him during the pandemic when he finally had space to ask himself like what actually matters to him. So if you're still figuring out what matters to you, and this is the challenging bit to be honest, but here are a few prompts. What makes you lose track of time is a good one. What do you get really passionate about and just completely forget the clock, and maybe start running late for things and that type of thing. What are you proud of years later? That definitely clicked with me because I've done a couple of things not job related, such as helping to renovate my grandparents' house when I was in my mid-20s. That was just very like a passion project, quite emotional and very rewarding. So that's what you're still proud of years later. The next one is, if you had to write your purpose in a single sentence, what would it be? I appreciate that can be challenging, and it's kind of a bit circular if you're trying to think about what your purpose is. But sometimes asking these kind of direct, simple questions can raise something to the surface, so worth asking yourself that. What gets you excited? Could be a small thing in or out of work, but that could become the main thing. The small thing, I always like to give an example of, say if you're working in a large corporate and you're doing a specific task, but actually you like to do a bit of training on the side, and that's become the bit that you look forward to the most. Well, how do you make the small thing the big thing? There's often a reason that you volunteered for something in the first place, even if it was just on the periphery of your role to start with. For me, I noticed I'm happiest when I'm helping people, a bit like Steve, helping people find a bit more meaning in their work, and that's led me to coaching and this podcast as well. Steve also talked about building on your strengths, not just fixing your weaknesses. He's big on positive psychology, leaning into what you're naturally good at. For him, it's spotting potential in others. For you, it might be creativity, it might be empathy or problem solving. When you work from your strengths, everything just feels kind of easier and lighter and not as heavy, it just feels better. The third lesson that we can take from Steve's conversation and Steve himself is embracing change and uncertainty. So let's talk about change. Steve's one of those rare people who actually gets a buzz from change, even if it's a bit kind of chaotic. But a lot of us get stuck in I need more security first. Steve could have done that. He'd been through bankruptcy, he'd been through divorce, which could make anyone risk averse. But instead, those experiences showed that he could rebuild. And here's the paradox. Sometimes accepting uncertainty makes you more stable than clinging to what feels sort of safe. Steve said, I don't worry too much about the future anymore. The future's not a given, is it? And that really kind of hit home with me. And that's something that I've tried to work quite hard on myself. It wasn't my strength thinking about that and embracing change. But as I say, I've worked on it, I've got better. So he used his strengths, big picture thinking, planning, and self-trust to make change less scary. And when I focus on what I'm good at, big changes feel more doable. Personally, that's how I feel. If I focus on like what my strengths are, rather than thinking all the downsides. So just throwing a few questions out there about this. When have you embraced a big change? How did you handle the uncertainty, and what helped you through it? And here's a challenge. What's one small step you could take forward, a change you've been thinking about? Maybe it's booking a coffee with someone in a field you're curious about, or just journaling your thoughts. So just taking that kind of small step. Lesson 4 was about the power of focusing on your strengths. We've touched upon this a bit already, but Steve's coaching is all about building on what's already working, not obsessing over weaknesses. He told this great story about performance reviews. You're doing great, but you need to be more like this other person. I mean, we've all kind of probably been there. He uses the Gallup strengths approach. I think there are other versions of this out there, but he's been trained up in this Gallup version, which says everyone has 34 themes of talent, but it's your top strengths that matter most. The big idea is you do your best work when you're using strengths. Teams work better when everyone brings something different, so why not focus on strengths? Trying to fix weaknesses is often a waste of energy and far more draining and heavier and more difficult. And success comes easier when you do things your own way, and it's going to chime with you. Steve and his wife are a great example. He's all about the future and strategy about how to get there, and she's more present focused, and together they balance each other out by the sounds of it. So what are your top 3 strengths? How could you use them more at work or in your life? For me, one is curiosity. I love digging into new ideas and asking questions. It's why I started this podcast, just having conversations with people and trying to learn and improve and just open your brain and think about things in a different way. Coming on to lesson 5, overcoming the fear of regret. I think this was it sounded like it was the most personal to Steve in a way, and he calls regret the most toxic thing you can have in your life. And I think that's what's pushed him to make such bold moves in his life, not wanting to regret looking back at himself when he was 80. I guess, what would you regret not doing in your life? Chances are it's not the car that you bought or whatever, or the flashy watch that you didn't buy. I don't think that's, maybe it's the more experiences you missed out on. But it's personal to each person, and that's important to sit down and think about what would you regret not doing. So you can use this mentality when you're facing a big decision and ask, what would my 80-year-old self say? And don't wait for perfect, just take the first small step towards something. Even if things go a bit wrong, you'll still have a story to tell, and I think that's a great mentality. Steve's had his share of setbacks. He's had visa issues, he's been separated from his wife for months, but he reframes them as stories, not failures, and sees a way to move past them. And I would say that's kind of real resilience. A few questions coming from this section about overcoming fear then for you is, what dream have you been putting off, and what was one small step you could take today towards it? Getting practical for a minute, Steve's journey is packed with advice you can actually use, real life stuff. So he was talking about envisaging your best life and dropping all the shoulds. Focus on how you want to feel, who you want to be with, not just what you want to have. Steve said, if you're stuck, fast forward what's the best life you can imagine, then work backwards. So keep the end in mind and work back from that. What's your perfect life? How could you possibly get there? Or even break it down even smaller than that. How would you like that relationship with that person to be better? How do I work back from that goal? Notice when you're on autopilot, are you asking, is this all there is? Are you just going through the motions? For Steve, it showed up as feeling tired and losing excitement for work. Define your enough number, the income that gives you security without sacrificing what matters. So Steve found that moving to Spain changes financial equation completely. And again, it's about thinking about things differently and life differently and how the bits of the jigsaw fit together and taking the time to do that. Focus on experiences, not possessions, was Steve's advice. He found more joy in a coffee at a local cafe than he did in luxury goods, and downsizing worked for him. So out of all of this, it's perhaps worth trying a bit of a life audit. Moving on to the Freedom Challenge. So let me talk you through how I actually tackled Steve's Freedom Challenge exercise, where he asked us to sit down and imagine our best life. I wanted to do this properly, so I did a bit of research on frameworks that might help me get clear on what I truly want. One thing that really resonated with me was the idea of splitting your goals into kind of end goals and means goals. End goals are those big, non-negotiable, the things at the end that I don't want to compromise on, the place that I want to get to. And means goals are the different ways that you might get there. So instead of getting stuck on one path, you focus on what really matters at the end, and you're more able to go with the flow and change direction, take different routes. So I took my journal, I got a coffee, and set aside about, I think it was about half an hour. I broke my vision into 3 areas: experience, growth, and contribution. So on the experience column, I realised that something's kind of been bubbling away for a while, which is I've always wanted to start my own business, have that kind of creativity, have that freedom to do what I wanted to do. And this coaching practice I'm building now, plus the podcast, is a huge step forward into that. But it's not just about work. I found that being creative, whether it's designing programs, recording these episodes, or brainstorming ideas, that gives me a sense of enjoyment. So yeah, creativity I've realised is important to me and gives me fulfilment. And it's not like a task, a to-do list. It's something that I genuinely want to do because I know eventually I'll crack it and I'll be able to help a lot of people out with this. So it's linked to what's meaningful to me. Travel is also a big one for me too. Perhaps not traveling all the time, but I love the feeling of landing somewhere new, meeting new people, different backgrounds. Again, I love this idea of fresh perspectives and getting just a different way of thinking about things. But at the same time, I also want to have a sense of home, which is important to me. We've moved to the Scottish Highlands, and I've got this vision of having a nice place to stay here so that friends can come and enjoy the local area, enjoy the great outdoors. We've got lots of forests and lochs and mountains and all that type of thing. So that's kind of my dream, long walks and friends coming to stay and that type of thing. Moving on to growth, I'm always at my best when I'm reading, learning, reading new books, listening to podcasts, listening to audiobooks, or just even reflecting on my own experiences. I've noticed that when I cut down on screen time, I'm sure this will strike a chord with a lot of people out there, I make space for real learning, everything just feels better. I think that screen time, I know it's totally cliched, but I'm the same as everyone else, just get trapped in bad habits, and when I manage to break out of them, then I just feel better. So I just have to keep reminding myself of that and just trying to keep breaking out and keeping to the right habits. Health and fitness are up there too, as you might imagine. I've signed up for a triathlon, which I've never done before, in September. So that involves running, cycling and swimming. So that's a new thing for me. And get me outdoors. I'm rubbish at swimming, so I've bought one of those blow up inflatable balloon things. I've bought a new wetsuit. I went out swimming, just me and the dog, the other day in the loch with this. Don't worry, it was safe. I had that inflatable thingy, so no one was gonna miss me out there. It's bright, luminous yellow. So yeah, getting out and doing something new like that, and pushing myself, trying new things, seeing what I'm capable of, because I've struggled with getting bogged down with kind of minor injuries and things like that, and then just not kind of getting around to working on fixing them and getting going again. So that's my challenge. Contribution, this is a big one. I want to help people who feel stuck or lost, just as I did at one point, and find what's really meaningful, or find other people find what's meaningful for them and help them lead a life that is attuned with what's really meaningful, and that's different for everyone, although there's probably some common threads. I want to change the way people experience work and life and to help them find more ease, more enjoyment, more meaning. One idea that really excites me, and this just kind of jumped out when I did the exercise and it's completely random, is fusing some of these ideas and running a retreat in somewhere like Thailand where people could come, learn, grow, reset, and it's a vision that combines everything like I like: travel, growth, helping others, memorable experiences. It's a bit random, but maybe it will happen one day. And as I was writing stuff down, I kept coming back to this phrase about adding value to people, and that's a thread that runs through everything for me. Just adding value, adding value, adding value, and if you're trying to do that, and perhaps also trying to take your own ego out of it as much as possible, then I believe that'll kind of come back to me, and I'll feel good about myself for ironically for trying to help other people. So what did I learn? Doing this exercise clarified my end goals, the things I'm not willing to compromise on, so meaningful experiences, constant growth, making a difference in other people's lives. The means might change. I might get through coaching, retreats, podcasts, or, to be honest, something I haven't even thought of yet, but those end goals are like my North Star, as they'd call it, possibly in the coaching world. So if this has been interesting at all, then I'd recommend giving it a try. Just set aside some time. You just need to grab a notebook. Don't worry about what's realistic or what you should or what you're meant to focus on. Just see what comes out, because I think it's a really useful exercise and gives you something to aim for. So just wrapping up this episode and what's next. Steve's story is proof you don't have to follow the usual path to find success. Sometimes the most valuable experiences come when you step off the hamster wheel and do things your own way. Whether it's finding your purpose, embracing change, or simplifying your life, there's much wisdom here in this conversation with Steve for anyone wanting more freedom and meaning. Before I go, a quick teaser about our next episode. I'm speaking to Fraser, who's actually an old friend of mine, and he's had a career that's zigzagged from law to international work in Abu Dhabi, and he's come back to Scotland. He's got some fantastic insights about finding sponsors in a working environment, dealing with imposter syndrome, which will again strike a chord with a lot of people, I think, and why sometimes the unexpected path is the most rewarding. So I will share that conversation with you and hope you enjoy it. So until the next time, remember, freedom isn't just about doing whatever you want. It's about having the time and space to focus on what really matters to you in your life and living on your own terms. Okay, until next time. Bye.